Hi Britt, you're Britt Mikkelsen and you just won the Mandola Art Award 2021 with your artwork, your sculpture, 8,200 souls. It's inspired by your connection with homeless people. I was wondering, you told us on numerous occasions that it's got 8,200 holes in a blanket you found, and you cut it in, and those 8,200 are people in Australia, a first world country, who are doing it rough every night.
Yes, rough, absolutely.
Yes. And you also refer to the people who are doing it rough as souls. Can you tell us a little bit more why you chose that word, souls?
I think it's because what confronted me about homelessness was really the idea that people who are homeless are often invisible or become invisible, and that they don't have a personality anymore. They become just a sum of them sitting there either asking for money or doing something else. And for me, when I sat down and spoke to some of the people who are homeless in my area, they're just like you or I. They have, some people have had worse situations. Some people are no different. There's just a couple of things that have gone wrong in their life, and then all of a sudden they've ended up on the street, which is really tragic, but really it could happen to anyone. And, just taking the time to speak to them and realising that they are, they have dreams and they have hopes, and just like you or I, and they are souls. So I guess that's why I chose that word, and to make sure that everybody, when they saw the work, realised that it was about the inner beauty of someone, not what you see on the outside.
And is that also why you chose to work with resin and firstly put it over a mould and then took the mould out? So what we see is an emptiness under the blanket.
Absolutely, yeah. So there is no one, because they're invisible, I guess, but what shines out is their inner light. So yeah, what's left is just the beauty within. Yeah.
Oh wow. And you saw that in meeting people. That's your experience.
Yeah. Sometimes they were terribly lost souls, and sometimes they were, they were just down on their luck, and they would still had, a great view on life. And I just felt, and I, it's not like I go and do it every day, don't get me wrong, like I've done it maybe, 24 times or something, but yeah, it was just different people in different situations, and I just think it's tragic that we just walk by and forget, because it's easier sometimes.
Yes. And you, while you were talking to people who were doing it rough, homeless people, you sort of encountered a light also shining from within.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And just the appreciation from within of you coming and sitting and talking to them occasionally. These poor people sometimes don't speak to anyone for days on end, and they just beam that someone sat down and gave them a second thought.
Another thing I noticed is when you see the sculpture is so it's the blanket, and then the blanket lays on the floor, and the person, the invisible person, is on the floor as well, in a very kneeling and almost a fetal position. Mm-hmm. You didn't put it on a pedestal or anything. It's just on the floor. Yeah. I guess that's on purpose.
Yeah, that was really important. The whole point is that it's down there and it's small, and the figure's quite small and very humble, and I think it would lose a lot of impact if you put it on a plinth. Mm-hmm. So the whole point is that you walk past someone and they're sitting on the ground, and they've already shown utmost humility just by doing that.
Yeah, and that also resonates with the theme of this Mandola Art Award, the mica, and that is to be humble. Be humble. So that's what you related to with the humbleness.
Well, not just that they show humility by having to do that, by having to ask for help, but also that in order to engage with people who are homeless, you have to be humble. You have to sort of go, I'm not that important. I'm not more important than this person. And that's the humility within the person to kind of approach someone who's homeless.
Right. You
so
sort
it's
of
humility on two sides.
Yeah, you sort of kneel with them.
Yes, yeah. And not think you're better. That's okay. Everyone's the same.
Yeah. I also read that it's not only about homeless people, this sculpture, not about homeless people only or you meeting them, but it's also a giving form to fragility.
Yes, yeah. It's an ongoing theme in my work. I tend to use holes a lot to create a feeling of fragility, and then I often light those holes, so to create a sense of awe. So I guess that's the spiritual side, or the light of God, I guess you could say, from within. And that fragility is, for this blanket, I wanted to look like it was, falling apart, had been used over and over, loved by someone, for years, and it is a vintage blanket from the 70s, so it was really important. I got an old blanket, and it does have stains on it, and it's not perfect. I don't know how many people have owned it, but those Onkaparinga blankets, I remember them growing up in the 70s, so I'm pretty sure that one's from the 70s, looking at the colours, so it's been loved, and it'll continue to be loved, and now it's been put to another use, so hopefully be appreciated. So there's that sort of sense of protection that the blanket creates, which also I think makes the sculpture a little bit, makes you feel a little bit uneasy when you first see it. It's immediately you kind of get this sort of uneasy reaction, and then you get drawn into it and read more into it,
Can you tell me a little bit more about, you say, I often work with holes because of the light, and of course Leonard Cohen's There's a Crack in Everything, that's where the light gets in, that immediately springs to mind. But how does it work for you in your art in general?
I think what it does in a strange way is create a sense of the feminine. That's a very strange thing to say, but for me it's sort of my way of expressing the femaleness about my work, and that might be whether I'm creating sculptures that are designed, early on it was designed around finds at the ocean, and then I created a veiled face a couple of years ago for Sculpture by the Sea, which was made up of aluminium but made to look like a veil of lace, so you could see through it, you could see through her eyes. So it's about sort of embodying something and personifying the way in which the viewer can see through something and then sees an empty space and then sees the world beyond, I guess. So there's this wall between the holes and the world beyond and the world behind them. And I guess I see them as little portals, or viewing portals into the world. Yeah. The fetal position is, I think it has, I think it's sort of, it talks a little bit about sort of praying, and talks a little bit about begging, and has a lot of connotations with, humility. I'm not sure if I see the figure as female. I haven't actually assigned a sex to the missing figure. I don't think it needs it. But the blanket, I guess it's protective, and the process of cutting the holes was almost meditative and, almost domestic, I guess, in a way, sitting there and cutting the holes individually. So, I guess it's something very feminine, the way it was made, the way I approached it in that way.
I looked at some other work of yours, and you say that nature is one of your sources, and so I guess that's a little bit more about the rest of your work. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so the Mandola was very theme orientated, so I had to kind of work to a theme, but normally I do work around nature and combining natural found objects with sort of the man-made. I used to, I'd meld kind of man-made resins into into timbers, into stone, and create works that sort of blur those lines between the man-made and the natural. I guess for me that's about us accepting that we are sort of an integral part of nature and we have to work with nature in order for it not to collapse, first of all, but for us to be able to continue to live in this world, yeah. Creating works that are like fossils and extrapolating what it would be like to be, for our society to be seen in 1 million years. So, yeah, and talking about our mortality in those terms and our importance or unimportance in the scheme of things, in the scheme of the world.
Yeah.
We are very self-important, but are we really? Well, when we're gone, and we will go, then the world will regenerate and do whatever it does and do something new and magical.
When we had a coffee before we started this talk, you said that you just have to do 3D. You can't paint. Paint is not you.
Yeah.
How come? So I'm fascinated.
Look, from being even from a small child, I was very creative, and I did used to draw a lot. But then I used to make things like we had not a big garden, like quarter acre. Well, it's big these days, but quarter acre block. I had 5 cubby houses in a quarter acre block, in every tree. Up in the garage roof rafters. I had them. I built things all the time, and I always built things. I think that's where my love of like making things came from. But in terms of 2D, I remember being at university and you have to do all the disciplines and see what you want to major in. And I just felt like there was something missing, like when I painted or when I drew or when I did printmaking. As much as the process was nice, it was just, I don't know, it's like this missing link that I couldn't quite express what I wanted to do, so everything felt lifeless. I don't think that's the medium. I think it's maybe the way I relate to the medium. Yeah. But for me, I'm trying to create something that is aesthetically captures the viewer and then draws them in enough for them to question that work. And I guess that's what the Mandola Prize work also tries to do. It draws you in and then makes you think, and I guess that's the nexus of what I'm trying to capture in my work. And the themes can vary, obviously, but yeah, if I can draw people in with that sort of beauty initially, and that might come through the light and the holes and the fragility and because you can capture someone for 2 seconds in artwork generally. It's a very short period of time, so the challenge is to bring the viewer in, I think, initially. And that, for me, is to do with aesthetics. Like I was working on these other works that recently that work thematically, and they work, but I just went, yeah, but they just don't capture that essence, so I just got rid of the whole idea. Yeah. Even though it possibly works as an artwork, it just doesn't draw in the viewer the way that I want it to.
And the essence, you say, that's beauty.
I think so, initially. Mm-hmm. But that's certainly not the outcome at the end. Mm-hmm. So with the ones that talk about, like, present ones that talk about our world and fossilisation, where we're heading, that's obviously quite a serious subject. So I want people to kind of think, well, why are these little people fossilised in amber? Oh, hang on. Oh, yeah. Oh, it's really interesting that there's a little family in here doing their thing, but, oh, they're captured. What's going on? So, yeah, so initially that, and then for them to question.
Yeah. Then you come to the next layer through the beauty, and then you start questioning it.
Yeah. And then it can be a bit ugly and a bit uneasy, unsettling. Mm-hmm. I think that's the balance I'm trying to find again. There's definitely wonder. I mean, I definitely walk around and pick up things and find beauty in the strangest of things, but yeah, I don't see the point of painting a landscape just for the sake of it, for example, or sculpting. I see the skill in it, sculpting a bust, or like if it doesn't have that extra addition of of questioning, then it's missing something for me as an artist.
And while you're talking, I get these images of Barbara Hepworth.
Oh yes, yep.
In Cornwall. I've visited her studio and where she lived, and so I see this pretty frail woman, with the hammer and making these big sculptures with the holes in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there any relation between you and her work?
I certainly love her work. Jean Arp's work, as far as sculptors. And then also the work of Andy Goldsworthy, but doesn't everyone? I mean, it's like the given. But just because of the understanding of nature that he has. So the other two for their ability to express form in a really succinct, aesthetic way. And then him for the natural element.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also, Barbara Hepworth was a woman in a man's world.
Absolutely.
How is it nowadays? How is it in your life, being a sculpture?
It's still, I think it's still a man's world. I shouldn't say that, but it probably still is. Art prizes, big outdoor works, they generally go to big steel monoliths, and women as a general rule don't make big steel monoliths. That's not all women, obviously, there's exceptions, but they tend to make much more meditative, repetitive works, or my colleagues' repetition is very important, as it is mine, cutting holes in a blanket for 3 months. And it's this meditative way of working, I think, is very female as opposed to the way men work as sculptors. It's the impression I get as a general rule.
Is it more of a ritual?
Yes, I think so.
So a feminine ritual, a nurturing practice.
Yes, absolutely.
Questioning practice.
Yeah. But I also don't like doing the same thing over and over. I'm not an artist who can, carve stone in the same form in different versions for 20 years. I'll do a thought process, and then once I feel like I've resolved it, I can kind of move on, and then I change the whole way of working and the whole way of thinking. So, and each one informs the next one, of course, but I don't tend to go, I did resin and acrylic with holes 5 years ago, so I'm still doing that. It's like, no, I'm not doing that anymore. Now I'm doing something else. But it's absolutely informed by the first things.
Yes, but you said you're sort of developing a thought or an answer to a thought by creating art.
Yes, yeah, and quite often when it's using natural materials, I don't sketch a lot. Some artists have big sketchbooks and stuff. It's all up here, and it's all in bits and pieces around the studio that worked or didn't work. And I guess my sketching is kind of making with new materials, so like growing crystals or making something look like amber, and it's that process of learning new ways of doing things is what fascinates me at the moment. Yeah. And quite often the material speaks to me. So like with my stoneworks, I will actually smash them against the ground, and wherever they break is where I have to put the sort of the man-made part of the sculpture in. So I don't go in knowing what it's going to be. I kind of just let it speak to me. So sometimes I'll have a rock sitting there if it's a rock for 2 years, and go, really, it's waiting, it's coming. And then one day it'll just hit me. Mm-hmm. And a piece of wood sitting around for 2 years before I worked out what I want to do with it. It's just, and then it just pops into my head. It's like it talks to me one day. Mm-hmm. And I just let it tell me what to do. Yeah.
So you're guided. Guided by the material.
Yeah. And by nature, I guess. And by what nature wants me to do to it.
Yeah. So it's very intuitive.
Yeah, very much. Very much.
Which to me comes across as the opposite of sculpturing. Because it's more about controlling your equipment and your material, but this is very intuitive.
Yeah, much different. So, you know, when I tell stone carvers that what I'm doing is smashing a rock on the ground, they go, but you know you can drill holes and get it precisely where you want. It's like, but that's not the point. The point is I need it to do what it wants to do, and then it tells me what the next process is, and they're like, oh, hang on, what? Why would you want to do that? And
Yeah.
Doesn't it fail? I said, yeah, it fails sometimes. That's part of the deal.
Mm-hmm.
With the Mandola Art Award, you know, I've read the theme and I felt something immediately, and I don't ever enter a art award that has a theme unless I feel it immediately, because then I feel it's really contrived. So I guess that's a really important thing for me, is there's this genuineness about what I'm doing, and it comes from my gut or my soul or wherever it comes from, but it comes, it just does its magic.
I would say, like, when I think about your sculpture, it's more like a humble, trying to find a connection with it, a sort of bowing.
Yes.
For.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess that goes to what I'm talking about with my artwork at the moment, with the way we will be perceived in the future, and our place in the world, and my place in the world, mm-hmm. and how I fit into that, and how I give into nature, mm-hmm. and give into, or help nature, or hinder it, I guess. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How is the connection between your art and finding meaning in your life, in your personal life?
Interesting. I think it's making art is very integral to my mental health. That's for sure. I guess for me it's about, how do I say this? Finding a way in which I can express. I've got a very tight-knit family. It's not very big. I've got a tight set of friends. You know, we immigrated from Denmark when I was little, and our extended family's not here, so we're very, very close. And so for me, making art, I guess, is an expression of making work that can express the way I feel about my family. So it's quite often, you know, it's about family, it's about future, it's about my place in the world, and as having an only child, and how she's going to go in the world being an only child, and so all those things come into my mind, but they don't directly form themes of my work, but I guess they're at the back of my mind when I'm working. Mm-hmm. Mental health, I get very anxious if I'm not being creative. I actually get very anxious, and my husband will say, you've got to go make something. So a holiday for me is actually not getting away from this. It's, short time, sure, but if I was to not make something in a month, I start getting quite fidgety and quite not very nice to be around. so it's better if I make something. I think. But I don't make work about those feelings, and my mental health's fine. It's not like I'm suffering any great issues, but I just feel more whole when I make.
So you need it because it's you.
Yeah.
In that way, it is a calling, because it is an expression of who you are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not an expression of all the things you're worried about or just that, but an expression of your being.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think I could make art that's just about me. I might find that a little self-important. Yeah, but that's just me.
So we were talking about how art relates to you finding meaning in life, and you said your connection with your small family, mm-hmm. that's very important. Yeah, so how does that work with your art?
I think, first of all, that my dad was not super supportive of me being an artist initially, but what I've found as I've found a little bit of success with my sculpture is that he's now so proud of me, and and just sharing it with them is lovely. So both my parents are quite elderly and they have trouble getting around, so sometimes I'll have to lug a lot of sculptures out over to my dad and doing over private viewing. And he'll sit there and he'll comment and he goes, I like that one, I don't like that one. He's like, good critic, it's good. I like sharing that with them. I think it's really important. It's also opened up their eyes a bit to what my dream was, you know, when I first left school and went, I want to be an artist. And I went away from art for a long time, just because I don't think I was ready mentally to kind of find out what my practice was going to be. So I did all sorts of other things, design, French design, all sorts of things, theatre, delved in all creative stuff, but not sculpture, even though I studied sculpture at university. So coming back to it and finding and going, yeah, I was on the right track when I was 20. You know, this is what I wanted to do. And then them seeing that and appreciating, wow, she did all these other things and she was very successful at them, but this is it. And they see that and it's lovely to share that with them. Yeah.
Yeah, so when we come to the physical side of things, you told me you don't have to talk about it if you don't want to, but you said that you take your mum to chemos.
Yep.
Is art for you important in a sort of a healing way, or be able to cope with bodily, physical things, or with, maybe loss, or?
Yeah, I think so. Of course, when you have to deal with something like cancer, and your parents having cancer, then other than the emotional turmoil, there is the physical aspect of taking them around a lot, and that's fine. It's what you're doing, and you do it because you love them, it's fine. But that takes time away from your practice. I need to go in the studio to kind of relax and stop thinking about all the other things I have to do for mum or for dad or for whoever else. Yeah. So I guess it is my little runaway.
Your own little shelter.
Yeah, my little shelter. Yeah.
Under your own little blanket.
Yeah. Leaving alone. Yeah.
Can you tell me a bit about your own spiritual background?
Mm-hmm. So, being Danish, I was brought up Lutheran, but not particularly strictly Lutheran, and as with many Christian faiths, you get christened or baptised, and then you go in and get confirmed. And I think the difference in Danish culture is that the confirmation is not a given. It's something you are asked whether you want to do or not, and it's very much accepted if you say, I don't feel comfortable doing that. And so I was never confirmed. But I think, the same tenets, and I guess that comes back to the Micah thing about kindness and thinking of others and just thinking about the world and trying not to harm people. I think that's really important. Even inadvertently, we can do that sometimes, and that's hard to bear, especially when it's inadvertent. We all do that sometimes. So I guess for me, it's about just being trying to be kind. I think is really important to me. Kind and faithful. It's really important to me. And being able to be trusting of others and myself for others. They're the really important tenets that I take away as a spiritual person. And I try to, practice those, but, we're all flawed. we don't always do right, but, it doesn't sit well with me if I've heard someone. It actually really eats away at me for a very, very long time. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now, at the end of this talk, I can just totally see why you made this specific sculpture, and congratulations with the award.
Thank you.
It's, this sculpture comes from a very deeply felt, good place, and it's to me that you created that is an act of kindness.
Yeah, I like to think that. I don't know. I'm not asked yet someone who's actually homeless what they think of it. Mm-hmm. So I must do that. I hope they wouldn't be insulted. I hope they see something in it. I've tried to do it from a place of kindness and a place of love. Yeah.
Yeah.